o'clock exactly. Had to run up and grab my 8 o'clock hazelnut. Hope you're all doing well. Looking outside, seeing blue sky, and knowing we're at least going to get into the 50s today. There's like this, for me anyway, this like, that was a rough couple days. That the snow, the frost, that was painful. So anyway, here we are. Yeah, we're gonna walk through the first part of Mark chapter 8 today, all the way to chapter 8. This is episode good morning sniffles. No kidding. This has been the worst allergy season on me. Wow, I can't even remember a time when I have been so just stuffed. And then I noticed that I'd gotten some, I think they're lilies, I'm pretty sure they're lilies, for Mother's Day, just kind of a centerpiece. And I do most of my work in this quarantine in the dining room right by those lilies. And just Kelly helped me put 2 and 2 together that I think I'm allergic to them for one thing, because I would sit in there and then all of a sudden just get all like stuffy and horrible. And Kelly said, these are I don't have much of a sense of smell. And Kelly said, I can't believe how these flowers fill up the whole house. I'm surprised you're not really reacting to that. And I realized that I think that's a big part of it, are the flowers I brought into the house. But anyway, all that from my cousin Paula calling me Sniffles. But hello Paula, hello Allison, Annette, hello. Lilies get you too, Annette. Like if I'm giving a sermon on Easter with lilies all around, I gotta like create a space where there aren't any, because it'll get to me halfway through the sermon. Dave, is that was I saw that picture of that muskie. Was that just caught, or that was from a former fishing trip? Just let me know on the feed, and I'll see it eventually. Morning, Dennis. Hi, Kathy. Hello, everyone else. So we are looking to Jesus for our view of God, not the nun that cracked our knuckles, that split our knuckles open with her ruler, not the authoritarian figures, not the. I'm not centered, and it's driving me nuts. How's that for random? Jeff Bush. Hello, sir. Jeff was a college quad mate in good old Quad C of Snodgrass Hall at Kentucky Christian, now University. So looking to Jesus for our view of God, Mark starts off with calling him Son of God, Son of Man, Christ. So very much the human one, the human view of God. And that's how Mark introduces us to this figure who comes on. So we need to look to him for our view of God. And remember, so far, morning, Mac, our view of God is he's very much for the common person. He's calling disciples who lived very far from God. He's overturning rules and rituals. He's raising the dead. He's serving even the Gentiles who were considered completely godless. He's inclusive. He's loving. He's compassionate. He's kind. This is our view of God. Good morning, Jackie. So now we get to chapter 8, and I want to talk about the miracle and then kind of the implications of the what surrounds the miracle, and then the implications that come from the Bible teaching the implications of the implications. So, yeah, we'll just get rolling here. Here is Mark 8. In those days, when again a great crowd had gathered, another mass gathering, and they had nothing to eat, he called his disciples to him and said to them, I have compassion on this crowd because they have been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat. So they haven't eaten anything in 3 days. They've essentially fasted apparently for 3 days, which tells you about life in the ancient world where you could go for that long listening to lectures for one thing, and then also without food. If I send them away hungry to their homes, they'll faint on the way. And some of them have come from far away. And his disciples answered him, how can one feed these people with bread here in this desolate place? Remember that. How can we feed these people with bread? And he asked them, how many loaves do you have? And they said 7. And he directed the crowd to sit down on the ground, and he took the 7 loaves, and giving thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples to set out before the people, and they set them before the crowd. And they had a few small fish, and having blessed them, he said that these also should be set before them. And they ate and were satisfied. And they took up the broken pieces left over, 7 baskets full left over. Keep that in mind. And there were about 4,000 people, and he sent them away, and immediately he got into the boat with his disciples and went to the district of Dalmanutha. So, couple things that stand out there. Number one, this isn't the first time. If you've been tracking, remember, just a couple chapters ago, he fed 5,000. Now he's feeding 4,000. Why was it that one of his disciples would even ask, how are we going to feed this crowd with only a couple, small resources? They had just been a part of a miracle prior where all the people ate from miraculous provision from Jesus. So there's that kind of confusion over what Jesus is even capable of, even though they saw him raise the dead, they saw him walk on the water, they saw him calm a storm, they saw him already feed a larger crowd, I mean. This was a smaller crowd, still a big crowd, but a smaller crowd than before. What's up with that? So he does this and then he leaves. Now remember, one of the reasons he probably got in the boat and left is because Matthew's gospel has told us that there have already been large crowds who have tried to forcefully make him king. So he's got to kind of hit and run with his miracles now. Now they're on the boat. They crossed over to Dalmanutha, and then the Pharisees came and began to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven to test him. And he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, why does this generation seek a sign? Truly I say to you, no sign will be given to this generation. And he left them. He got into the boat again and went to the other side. So, another perplexing statement. He has just fed 4,000 people, that 4,000 men plus their wives and kids. So let's say 10,000. I don't know. He just fed a high school stadium full of people miraculously, and they're saying, yeah, we're going to need some proof that you're more than just human, that you come from God. Then we get to here. Now they had forgotten to bring bread. Now they're in a boat going to the other side. Okay, they were at this side, then they went to that side, now they're going to that side. They had forgotten to bring bread. They had only 1 loaf with them in the boat. And he cautioned them, saying, watch out, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven or leaven of Herod. And they began discussing with one another the fact that they had no bread. And Jesus, aware of this, said to them, why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Hi, Carrie. Are your hearts hardened? Keep that in mind. Having eyes, do you not see? Having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves? Or 15 minutes ago when I fed 4,000. So he's talking about, do you not remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many baskets were left over? And they said 12. How about the 7 loaves for the 4,000? How many baskets, how many broken pieces did you take up? And they said to him, 7. And he said to them, do you not yet understand? Hello, Mrs. G. So, there's just mass confusion right now. Let's talk about the first of the miracles that we read. Let's talk about the miracle. He fed 4,000 people. Just give you a brief survey of that. Why did he do it twice? Why did Mark include that twice? If Jesus is a miracle machine, why was that included twice? Why did that take up the space in just the short book of Mark? Many scholars speculate that it has to do with the region. So one of the this is just a data point for you, for my Bible scholars out there. One of the earliest controversies in the church. Mark's usually seen as one of the first gospels to be written, one of the first books of the New Testament to be written, and one of the earliest problems the church faced was the inclusion of the Gentiles into, morning Tony, into the church. So the early Jesus movement was primarily Jewish, and obviously, Jesus came in Jewish family, Jewish culture, and many Jews left, or not really left their faith, but moved into what would have been considered very much a sect of Judaism, Christianity, the way it was called, followers of Jesus. Okay, he was the rabbi, and they followed him. So the earliest Christians, morning Bianca, had Jewish roots, which had a lot of subculture, following Sabbath, following the 10 Commandments, avoiding certain kinds of food, things like that. Lots of rituals, lots of rules. It was a very structured faith. And then there's these Gentiles who had grown up worshiping multiple gods, drinking blood, eating food that had been sacrificed to other idols, doing all sorts of things in the temple that would have made people in Vegas uncomfortable, okay? And so now these people are following Jesus. They have very little Judaism or Jewish understanding in their background. Their set of ethics are very different. What they considered clean and permissible was very different. And so as you read the book of Acts even, and study any kind of early church history, this was a big problem that the early church leaders are trying to figure out is what do we do with these Gentiles who want to be followers of Jesus? Now, Acts says that even Peter had a real problem with it, that he battled on and off with, even after he sort of included them, he still struggled to really identify with them on the same level as his Jewish brothers and sisters who were a part of the Jesus movement. So this miracle is important because we're in a section of Acts now where Jesus is traveling around Gentile territory. After he fed the 5,000, which was in Jewish territory, he then moves on to do things through Gentile territory. And if you're really taking in the story, your mind is probably, like if somebody's telling you this story from memory by the fireside in some tribal situation 2,000 years ago, you're probably now have in your mind's eye that Jesus is Gentiles are following Jesus. So whereas you could have more easily, and again, I keep going back to jokingly the Browns Steelers kinds of things of take the diehard Cleveland Browns fans, and then you got the guy who loves the Browns, and he's one of the, he grew up a Cleveland, he watched Brian Sipe and Bernie Kosar and John, he cried from John Elway, and then all of a sudden now he's in Pittsburgh serving lunch to Steelers fans. This is kind of the idea, only it's more on along the lines of really you'd have to go either Republican to Democrat or Christian to Muslim. It just would have made no sense for most of Jesus' early followers, or for the Jewish crowd. Morning, Dan. Or for the Jewish crowd that that first was interested in Jesus. It would have made no sense to them for him to show love and kindness and mercy and compassion to Gentiles. Well, now he's got them following him, and he's probably in their territory. And now he hands out bread miraculously to feed 4,000 men plus their families of Gentiles. Now, the symbolism here is even deeper, because the symbolic imagery is God giving manna to the, oh, my bird friend is back, who continues to, I don't know why I just waved at him, who continues to crash into the window from his little perch there. Anyway, it, for him to include them in manna language, where he's doing things symbolic of Moses to the Israelites, but now doing so to include the Gentiles in that would have been very telling language to the first crowd. That was a highly symbolic statement that was included in Mark, that now the Gentiles are included in the same bread of life kind of miracles that the Jews were. So this was significant. 7 baskets. You get numerology in the scriptures gets pretty crazy. Jews were huge into numerology, or at least the belief that numbers were symbolic. And so there are some people that do some pretty, out there things with these numbers. I don't know. Was there a reason that 4,000? Was there a reason that 5,000? Maybe, probably. Can we know what that was? We can speculate. There's a lot of possibilities. The 12 and 7, I think, are stronger in possibilities. 12 almost certainly represented Judaism. 12 tribes of Israel. 7 probably in the ancient Jewish mind would have represented completion, like the idea of first it was the Jews, and now we see the completion. 7 baskets left over representing totality, the inclusion of Gentiles as well. And this is one where it's just really hard for our modern Western minds to grasp. In our modern Western minds, the idea, what do you mean, 12 baskets left over? Why? Because there were 12 baskets left over. They just counted them. 7 baskets left over, that's because they counted them and there were 7. But for Jews, almost any time there's a number that's made mention of, it has some kind of a reason that they called out that number. There were names associated with numbers, like when Matthew talks about 14 generations. Well, that was the number of David. 14, because the letters of his name. Anyway, all that, just I could go and bore you to death, but numbers were almost always specific. But I could say that they're probably 12 and 7 represented from Judaism to the inclusion of the Gentiles, but even that's a guess. 4,000 and 5,000, there's all kinds of speculation, but that's a guess. Now let me move on to the deeper thing here. There's something else going on, and it's represented in the Pharisees want a sign. They don't, in spite of one of the more spectacular miracles that Jesus is going to do. Wouldn't you agree that that's pretty spectacular? I mean, any miracle, restoring sight to the blind, is spectacular, but when you start to multiply, you're creating from nothing, which is, like Genesis language, you're creating bread from nothing. That's pretty spectacular in terms of the hocus pocus type miracle. You do that, and then the Pharisees want a sign. Now, one of the reasons that they may have wanted a sign is because now he's including Gentiles. So it's like, well, what do you mean you're including Gentiles? How prove to us that was okay? So there's a little bit of that there. But then even the disciples, who, number one, they're in this miraculous setting, and Jesus says, let's give them bread. And they're like, well, how are we going to do that when he had just done that for a bigger crowd? And then they're in this boat, and Jesus talks about leaving, and they conclude he must be upset that we don't have bread. Like, he just fed 4,000 people, 10,000 people with wives and children. Hey, Martha, he just fed them, and we have a loaf, and there's 13 of us in the boat. He's got this, guys, but they're thinking that there's confusion over that. Now, the leaven of the Pharisees and Herod is almost certainly, which is relevant today, imperial. Like, there's this imperial thing of who gets bread and who doesn't, who gets the miracles and who doesn't, who's in and who's out, who's powerful and who's nobody. And it spreads all through. One of the hidden from Genesis 11 on, and really you could even take it from the creation story where and I'm really going off now. In a creation story, well, let's just let it ride. I can't wait to hear what I have to say. In a creation story where creation creates abundantly. I mean, there's repetitive language where food bears seeds which bear fruit in its own kind, and its own kind, and its own kind. The implication is that creation just keeps on creating. God just keeps on providing through the land. And then comes empire that starts to create scarcity and that builds systems. And then you get to Genesis 11, where now there's Babel, and Babel was created by conquest, and now there's who's in and who's out, and who has and who doesn't, and there's walls, and then God scatters that. And then we move on up to the Pharisees and Herod, who worked together, by the way. Herod appointed much of the Jewish power structure. We learn that from Josephus, a historian. But then you get this empire. So from Genesis 11 on through definitely the book of Revelation. If you wanna study Revelation, I think the thing you get out of Revelation more than anything you're ever going to point to and say, oh, that's that, is God versus empire. So there's empire that scatters throughout everything, and when you come to empire, okay, let's let that go, and we'll run with that in a future moment, in a future episode. But Walter Brueggemann, by the way, if you Google him, and he writes a lot about that, fascinating stuff. But what I really want you to see for today's purpose, especially as it relates to what we're going through right now as a country, and as a world, actually, because we're all in this. We really are all in this together. There's confusion. And so Jesus says, let's read it. Okay. Why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Having eyes, do you not see? Having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember? That's important language, because we've read that before in Mark when Jesus speaks in parables. It says he spoke in parables so that having eyes they would not see, and ears they wouldn't hear. And what we see through all this that I want you to see, and again, it goes back to this modern Western. We want decisiveness. We want conclusiveness. But there's this journey thing where it's a mystery. Why was it that some people could be right in the middle of it all and not get it while others could? Why is it that just a chapter before there's a woman who, the Peloponnesian woman, the Syrophoenician woman, who was very far from God, looked to Jesus as the Messiah, the Savior who could heal and raise the dead and cast out demons in her instance, whereas other people right in the middle of it, the disciples even, had no faith that he could replicate a miracle that he had already done. Why is there confusion? why is it that somebody in one environment could conclude one thing, meanwhile another person in the same environment concludes completely different? And so I think what we need to understand is, first of all, as we look to ourselves, we need to be aware of our heart and the softness versus the hardness of our heart. Jesus says, "Why are your hearts so hardened?" And so as we modern Westerns tend to want decisiveness, conclusiveness, tend to believe our opinion is the right opinion, tend to believe that you're wrong and you're an idiot. I think number one from this, one of the things that we need to have is a respect for everybody's journey, because different people conclude different things when they're right in the middle of it. And also we need to have a definite appreciation for, awareness of the very real possibility that we could be wrong. Right in the middle of all the right information, right in the middle of believing all the right things, or having all the right things shown to us, we could still conclude the wrong things. And I think it's super important today that we are aware of everyone's humanity, aware of everyone's journey. And it's not that it's all okay and it's all relative. That I think that there's clearly, even in this mess that we're in right now, like there's a right and there's a wrong. But when you're faced with, like, is Dr. Fauci and Dr. Acton, do they know what they're talking about or not? That's an opinion. It's just, I have a friend of mine, Brian, just posted some things today about, like, the schools, and never thought about this, but in January a lot of schools were shut down and cleaned because of all the flu going through. An unparalleled, was that flu or was that corona? We don't know. It's a matter of opinion. And I think that when one people faced with a body of evidence conclude that we should wear masks and take this very seriously, well, another faced with the same information conclude that this is all hype, or that, well, we all have it now. There's herd immunity now. Let's go for it. One group aren't idiots. Other groups aren't home cowering in fear. Like, we need to stop assuming the worst of people, because what this shows us is that we can be in the midst of right answers. And based on our heart, based on our inclinations, based on our past, based on our fears, conclude very different things. And so one of the things that I hope as we face this this next season, let's believe the best about each other, and let's show the compassion that Jesus showed to the crowds. But that's all baked in here to these stories. And again, man, this stuff is written 2,000 years ago. And if we're willing to let it speak to us and through us and in us, like this story, this story of this is like, what is it? Let's I need to just keep it open. Okay. After a miracle was done, there's basically, 6 sentences devoted to this conversation that breaks out in a boat with Jesus and his followers. And it's extremely relevant to what we're going through in 2020 with the coronavirus and in infectious disease that they could have never dreamed about. And if we'll let it speak, it just continues to speak to new issues, to new generations, thousands of years after it was birthed. It's just a matter of deciding, you know what, I'm gonna, and that's, we close with that. So much of this and I want to be clear, don't hear what I'm not saying. I believe that the Bible is the Word of God, and that there is truth, eternal truth. Eternal truth. Having said that, a lot of the implications, and even as we search for that truth, it's possibilities. And in so much of Scripture, now we don't have to discuss the possibilities of the resurrection. Like the way the Bible is written, it is very clear that the Bible puts forth the reality of the resurrection. But when it comes to why were there 4,000 people and 5,000 people and 7 baskets and 12 baskets, and what is the leaven of Herod and the Pharisees? These are possibilities. And in speaking in parables, Jesus invites us with a lot of this stuff to explore the possibilities and see things as possibilities. And I think you'll have more fun with Scripture. It will be more alive. And you'll have fun as you respectfully, I saw somebody in the feed talked about that respect thing. As we respectfully explore possibilities with each other. There's a lot of flavor in life that comes through that. But there are still churches and people that want to make this stuff like you're a heretic or you're an idiot if you don't explore possibilities. And this is an endless, it's fun. It'll get you up early. It'll keep you awake late at night exploring the possibilities of these ancient scriptures. Or we can be rigid and hard and callous and extremely divisive over this stuff as well. Yeah, I think I can be done for today, and we will we'll join in again at 9 a.m. Again, more of the same stuff. So much of this stuff is all thematic, and we find ourselves going back to the same kinds of ideas over and over again. All right, I will see you guys tomorrow at 9. Enjoy the sunshine today, the better weather. And hey, things are opening up, and it's all good news.